Hi guys, this morning I would like to show you my very simple, easy soup recipe, and it's cold weather at the moment, so it's a very nice time to make warm soup. This is a medium consistency soup. It's quite a few basic ingredients and it turns out absolutely delicious. It can also be frozen, and I do add a little bit of shin bone, or 1 or 2 pieces of shin bone, just so that we can get a bit of a beef flavor. I do also blend the ingredients near the end of the soup after cooking, and I do that just to make it a medium consistency and not too chunky. The shin bones obviously I would remove before I blend, simply because you don't want to blend meat. It'll make your soup really stringy. So you just want the flavor to come out of the shin bones. And what I do is take the meat out of the pot at the end and chop the beef into small pieces and put them back in the pot. And that way when you serve the soup, you can serve a little bit of meat with it. Okay, the first ingredient that I have here is celery. Now the celery I just chop up into small pieces. It's already been washed and cleaned. I just do this. And as you can see, this is the size they come out to approximately, nice and fresh. And I put them into the pot with a little bit of olive oil. Then when I'm finished doing the celery, I do carrots. Now just to let you know, we are in lockdown at the moment, so it's preferable not to scratch through all the vegetables and pick out the nicest ones. You know, the less contact and touching we have, the better. So I got some carrots, but unfortunately I had to take a few that were not perfect shapes. Not that that is of any importance, because we're going to chop it and cook it. In fact, for soup, it's probably a good thing to use up these little ones that have some blemishes. And also, being a soup and the fact that we're going to boil it, it doesn't have to be a young carrot. It can be a large, older carrot. There may be more flavor. The young, nice, juicy, small carrots we can use for eating, or for salads where you really need nice, young, fresh carrots. Okay, and this I would do exactly the same thing that I've done with the celery, and that's to just chop it into slices like this. You can do it anyway. They don't have to be particularly attractive, because we are going to blend them at the end of the day. So we're looking at popping them in to the pot with the celery, and you can put in probably 2 bunches of celery, and a couple of carrots would be good. Then the third ingredient is potatoes. And with the potatoes, I chose fairly big ones, medium or large, because it's easier to cut them. Yeah, the more you have to peel, the smaller they are, the more you have to peel. So basically, the medium or big size potatoes are much easier to just quickly peel and chop. And I've already peeled the potatoes. We have a few here, and you can do exactly the same thing. I chop them down the middle, and then I start slicing. Sometimes I even slice this way as well, so that when you cut your potato, it's going to be in 4s. But split the potato up like this, because it's easier when it doesn't roll around. And then you just quickly slice the potato. And I put in about 6 potatoes into a pot this size, and perhaps 6 or 8 carrots, and as I said, 2 bunches of celery. Chop it all up. Potato generally cooks fast, same as celery and so on. So it's not an issue, the size of the things. But obviously the smaller you make them, the quicker it's going to cook. Right, so then you have your 3 main ingredients: potatoes, celery and carrots, and a little bit of olive oil, remember, as I said, and I'm going to pop the shin bones in. But what I want to tell you, what we do to make the soup really flavorful and to have the flavor come out is sweat the vegetables first. Do not add water and start boiling your soups. That's the biggest mistake you can make. We need the vegetables to sweat all the juice and all the flavors out first. Okay, so that is the shin bone I keep aside, because what I will do with that is in a pan, I will just put a little bit of olive oil and I'll just fry them until they're brown. Just plain like that to get that brown flavor out of the shin bones. And then I would add them to this even when I'm sweating them. Okay, I'll continue when we get to the stove. The reason I'm doing the kitchen sink, it's just easier for chopping and peeling. Right, so just a quick reminder, you're going to need 1 or 2 shin bones, and you're going to need carrots, celery, potatoes, and chop them up nicely so that they're ready to put into your pot. Put them in the pot with a bit of olive oil, and we are ready to go to the stove. Right, we now have our pot on the stove. I'm just going to switch it on. And this is where we start sweating the vegetables. So I put it onto some heat and just mix all the vegetables in. Get a little bit of olive oil on all of the vegetables. It's not a lot of olive oil, maybe say a tablespoon or 2 teaspoons. Right, then you just let the heat come up so that it can start sweating the vegetables. At this stage, I also like to put just a dash of salt in. It will get salted when we put the stock cubes in, so it's not too much of an issue, but it just helps to bring the flavor out as well. And then I'm just adding a little bit of thyme, not too much, but some to flavor the soup. And I love to use Italian herbs, so that is thyme and Italian herbs. I would say with the Italian herbs, because I'm making quite a big quantity, it's probably a tablespoon of Italian herbs as well. Right, now it's starting to sweat. You can put the temperature down slightly so that the pieces of vegetables don't burn on the bottom. But it will start making its own steam and its own liquid. It won't be very much, but it's enough to sweat the vegetables. And that's exactly what you want to do. And you can even cover it at this stage. It will help to keep the moisture in. Right, just to come back to the stove, I just want to show you how nicely this is sweating. You can see the steam rising and the herbs are on the vegetables. And just to tell you, you could do this for about half an hour to get the vegetables really nicely steamed, or sweated as they call it. And in that time, you can put the lid on, because that helps just keep the flavors in. Right, and while you're busy doing that, you can come to your little pan with your 2 shin bones in. Now, I would normally actually throw the 2 shin bones into that pot with the olive oil before I even start adding my vegetables, but I just wanted to keep the pot available to put my vegetables in for this video. So I'm going to just brown them quickly in the small pan. And that browning just brings the flavor out as well. And then from there, I'll transfer them back into the vegetables, which are sweating nicely now. All that yummy flavor coming out. Okay, let me just turn this up a little bit. Just keep it going. And I'll brown it. But as I say, if you want to save on pots and pans, just put these into the big pot first, with a little bit of olive oil, brown them, then remove them. And then you can add the vegetables, steam the vegetables, and add the shin bones afterwards. Right, and while the vegetables are steaming and the shin bones are browning, I'm just going to make myself a nice cup of cappuccino. And of course I don't do it the Italian way, I do it the Nespresso way. It's much easier for me and it makes the most delicious cappuccino. There's a lot of noise going on at the moment. You can actually hear the shin bones frying as well as the cappuccino maker making this nice cappuccino. Right, and there we go. The chops are nicely browned. It just helps to bring that delicious flavor of the beef out. And that just adds to the flavor of the soup. Unfortunately they curl. What you can do, if you wish, is just to slice that little piece of fat to open it up. And in that way you can flatten it. I'm not going to do it today. Just going to press it down with a fork. But just like you would crisp, nice crispy bacon, you just do the same with the beef. And of course the vegetables are coming on so nicely. I can already smell all the delicious flavors, and the herbs are coming out. And the meat, of course. Right, and now we can just add the pieces of meat onto the vegetables. Those little pieces come apart, but that's absolutely fine. And you just put it into the vegetables like that. Sorry, I'm working with one hand here, trying to video this. Okay, so leave your meat on top, and once again, let it continue steaming with the lid on. Right, the vegetables have been sweating for about half an hour. There's a lot of flavor in the kitchen now, and it smells divine. Okay, everything's transparent and starting to cook and soften, and the flavors of the herbs have now come out. So we're ready to add water and stock cubes. Now, just to remind you that up until now, I have not put any water into this. The water and moisture that it's steaming in is actually coming from the vegetables themselves. And this is a part that's so vital. I remember staying at a bed and breakfast some years back, and the owner of the B&B was serving the most delicious soup. Every evening we had a different flavor, but every single one of them was exemplary. And I asked him over and over to please share his recipes with me. And he said to me, it's not about the recipes. There's a secret, and he wouldn't give me the recipes, but he did tell me if there's one thing you have to do when you want to make a really delicious soup, and that is to sweat the vegetables first, get all the flavors out, and then you continue with the soup. So I'm just going to show you. We will need 3 stock cubes. You want beef stock cubes. You may need to add a little bit of salt, which you will taste later on when you do your testing, and maybe add a bit more, because salt also tends to bring the flavor out. The other thing that I am using, and I add not only just before eating, but while cooking, I do add a little bit of Worcester sauce. I don't know if every country has Worcester sauce, but this is a beef-based, very liquid sauce. I'm going to just add some to the vegetables here. So I just put a couple of splashes in. One can always add more as you do the testing and tasting. Okay, I have already mixed the stock cubes or dissolved them in hot water, and I'm just going to add them like that. And now I'm going to add water. And the water you can fill right up to the top of the pot, or depending how much you're making. But I've made quite a big pot today. So I just fill it up with water, and obviously now I'm just going to put the heat up a bit to bring that water to the boil. And I'll put the lid on, just make sure it doesn't boil over. But that's basically your soup. And now we're going to cook it for maybe an hour, just to make it into a soup. And before it's finished, I will do the blending and show you that further. Okay, so the soup has now been cooking for an hour approximately, and I have removed the shin bones, as you can see, and I'm just going to cut them up into small little pieces. If you want to remove the fatty parts, you can. If you want to remove any sinews, you can, and if you wish to leave the bones out at this stage, you can do that as well and just discard them. If you don't mind the fatty parts or the sinewy parts, that's fine. It's going to be cut into small pieces, so it adds to the soup, and as the days go on, by tomorrow it'll be adding flavor as well, and a little bit of fat always adds flavor. But I'm cutting these into really small little pieces, simply because it's easier for everybody to get a little piece of meat with their soup. So when you dish up, you can put soup in, but also just scrape on the bottom and get a few pieces of meat. That way everybody benefits, and the marrow, of course, in the bone must always be taken out, because that's part of the delicious part. And then I will usually discard these two bones now. Right, and I'll just continue cutting this into nice fine pieces. In fact, if one's eating the soup and you get a piece of sinew or rind or whatever, you can always just take it out, put it aside. It's not such a big issue, especially if it's not a party or an occasion and it's just home cooking. I would probably discard this piece. It's a little bit too fatty. Sorry, the video is not so clear, but we have a bit of steam coming up here. Right, now we keep this apart, the meat apart, because we're still going to be blending the vegetables. Right, I'm going to be making a bit of a noise now, but I just use an ordinary blender like this, and I stick it in and I start blending. Just tilt it to one side so that the vegetables can go in at the bottom. And another thing you can do is to leave some of the vegetables whole, just to give a little bit of texture to make it look slightly chunkier. But at least 90% of the vegetables, or 95%, I chop up. And that's the soup done. At this point, you can put your meat into your soup. Stir it in nicely. You can see the consistency is nice and thick, and there's one or two little pieces left that have not been blended, just to make it look nice. Then you're ready for tasting, and if you taste it, and it tastes fantastic. It actually doesn't need anything else. You may want to add a little bit of salt, depending on your taste. I'll put a little bit on, but I don't actually need it. And then the other thing, a little bit of Worcester sauce just before you serve it, just to put a little dark streak in it. But for the rest, the soup is done, and that is how it looks. Absolutely delicious. Thank you, guys. I will be sharing other recipes with you, but today's is finished. And once you've made your soup, I hope you really enjoy it. Cheers for now.